his first time on Check the Mic, but his return with us. JT, how's it going, man?
What's up, guys? Congrats on the new look, the new vibe-ish over here. I like it.
Thank you, sir. How's
Thanks.
it going?
It's going well. I'm fired up to talk about some shouty shows.
Yeah.
That's our new segment that we don't get to hear them until we're live on the air, and they give us these, ridiculous takes from we call them the shouty shows, right? The shows that we don't love. I don't tune into those shows, so we react to them live on the air.
That's probably the best way to handle that type of stuff. I'm not a huge fan myself, if you couldn't gather.
I was gonna say, do you watch any of that stuff? Like, what do you have on in the TV in the background during your day to day?
I turn on the TV usually like while I'm eating lunch type of thing. Catch maybe some NFL Live, probably whatever's on ESPN. This is my time of year, actually, with the baseball playoffs. Catch a little day game maybe. This is like peak midday TV.
You're a Padres fan?
Come on now.
Yeah.
This is it, bro. This is the year. Lock in.
All right. Well, I'll root for the Padres. I have no rooting interest.
I was gonna say, they're not one of the teams that
I did not play for the
you
Padres.
usually have a connection with some team.
I'm a former Giant, so I root for the Giants, and they're not here. So
I get it.
I'll root for the Padres.
Hard when you've been in it, but but yeah, down here, San Diego, locked in. We finally got something that's exciting to watch, and it'll go in tonight. So hopefully, I'm not the issue.
Looking forward to watching some baseball playoffs, aren't you, Sam?
I've been to a Padres game.
Well, look at you, more than me.
Heck go.
There you go.
It's a good spot to go.
It is.
Let's talk QBs as always. Your YouTube's growing, I see. Patreon's growing. Tell everybody where we can hear you first, and we'll talk a little bit Caleb Williams to kick it off.
Yeah, YouTube is the home. YouTube's like the hub of how this thing got going, but the Patreon thing has kind of taken off and become its own little entity, and so it's a lot of fun to get over there. And it's a little bit more deep divey. It's a little bit more like what it would be like in a position meeting type thing. It's a little bit looser with the language. A little bit less quarterback. It's actually I honestly think it's very much like a quarterback room, because there's a lot of complaining about wide receivers, pass protection, play calling, talk some defense, those types of things. That just is real life, what happens and how it all impacts the quarterback position, because they're the front of it and going to hear the brunt of the issues. So it's fun for me. I really just dive into the stuff that I'm interested in, and the young quarterbacks coming into the league this year are fun and exciting to see what these guys have got going here, like the quarter marker.
So, I want to talk Caleb Williams to kick things off. And when you do, even in your YouTube breakdowns, you're getting into the scheme. You're getting into what the receivers are doing, the attention to detail, what you think the play call is as much as you can and everything. So, high level, what are you seeing from the Bears? What are you seeing from Caleb Williams?
Well, I think, I'm probably as guilty as anybody of having really high expectations for this guy coming into the league, just to kind of, what I wanted is for him to do his thing. And I feel like that initial part of it, at least very early on, has maybe not flourished as much as I would love. Mm-hmm. It feels like when I'm watching the film that he is playing with kind of constraints on, and if that's what they're doing organizationally, that's their choice. I think when you couple that with maybe a perimeter that isn't quite as good as maybe people thought it was going to be, and then some issues in the pass protection with a different play caller, you can see some early struggles. I think you can also point to some steady progress and some, maybe not wow extend plays, but the capacity to deliver the ball, play on time, not bail from the pocket, those types of things that I think some people maybe thought, oh, he can't play on schedule, he can't play on time. That you can see the fingerprints of it. I just want to see him get the opportunity to flourish in his game. And for right now, it just feels like either that's not being promoted, he doesn't feel comfortable doing it, or all of the above.
I've been surprised by how bad that offensive line has looked this season. I thought that simply getting away from Justin Fields would actually make that group look a little bit better. The way he plays the game, they're just getting wrecked. How much of that do you think is on the personnel? How much of it is on the scheme? How much of it is on the way Caleb's playing the game right now?
Well, I would go even further back and say that those are ramifications of organizational decisions, right? Like, you are where you put your money, those types of things that I get. But when you go out there with guys that are, and this is no like direct shot across the bow at these guys up front, especially the interior, you can't play quarterback consistently well when there is that much of a push, and just not even a push. It's like an immediate L. it's like a tidal wave across your face where you all of a sudden you can't even get to your first read. You can't even get a hitch off. And the consistency there, I think it's actually been pretty admirable for how much Caleb has wanted to stay in the pocket. There are certain plays where it looks like he's like, fucking, I'm not coming off this spot no matter what, where you're like, you just get out, create those types of things that I feel like for whatever reason has been difficult, but it has been frustrating. I probably wasn't as high on that group. And I know Justin took a hit for how long he held on to the ball. And there are certainly elements that certainly negatively impacted his play and his time in Chicago. But man, I just want to see, I feel like when I watch this offense, and it's an easy kind of hedge to say, oh, hey, you're making excuses for Caleb, but I don't necessarily love how they use some of the personnel. I don't think many of those guys on the perimeter look like they're very healthy. The personnel choices, like the groups of people that have been on the field, have been confusing. How they're using them has been confusing. And so you couple all that together, and you get this kind of like middle of the road, ho hum, let's win with defense type of vibe here early on.
Yeah, I mean, going through Sunday's game in particular, I think when an offense, look, they won the game, but an offense, they're not moving the ball effectively. And I think to your point, my expectations were really high for Caleb, especially with the outside of structure stuff. I thought the natural playmaking would show up immediately. But like when you go through Sunday, it's like, what broke down on this play? This one, it was the offensive line. This one, it could be the scheme. This one, the receiver, I don't know if he's in the right place. But then you have plays like the turn down that you showed where Dunze's running behind the defense and he's just not taking that. Or he's got the red zone pass to DJ Moore. Maybe they're a little not on the same page. Some of the misses from Caleb feel like they're way off, or he's missing the deep shot. Like it's like one thing's breaking down every single play, I think, for this offense.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no excuse. The one that I think really stings for me was that turn down to Rome down the field. Yeah. Like that's
it's a 70-yarder. It's a 70-yarder if he throws it.
You don't get those opportunities. I mean, those are big plays. You get one of those like once every 4 games type of that's a once a month shot in the league. I think of like Darnold hitting that a few weeks ago. Those are back-breaking shots, and to not even get there. So then I get really nervous, because then I'm like, hey, are we not identifying this pre-snap? Because we're turning the back, we're playing under center. That part of it, you have to know pre-snap. All right, split field coverage. I'm going to look at that safety. If that safety hesitates at all, this post is going over the top. That's the whole reason we're calling the play. Are we looking the other way? And how we got down to the check down. I know people are like, oh, he's getting through his reads. He's getting through that's fine when there aren't things there. But when there are things there and they're that big and they're that hookup, and it feels like they're being really intentional with trying to create that connection between those two guys, that those ones are they really sting, man. You got to learn from that and have it never show up on the film again.
Meanwhile, you've got Jayden Daniels playing out of his mind in the first few weeks, where he's setting NFL records for completion rate. He's looking incredibly good. He's learning how to slide. He's not launching himself, shoulder first into every hit as well. How impressed have you been by Jayden Daniels so far?
I mean, I don't know if you can overstate it, to be honest with you. I mean, it really has been that impressive. I know it's kind of it's one of those things, again, where we're so early, and I'm guilty of this as anybody, because you're in it every day, but we're so early. But when you look at the completions and just the completion percent, and I'm one of those guys that I actually like to kind of throw shade at people when they're like, look at the completions, they're all perimeter screens or, RPO type centric stuff. There's certainly a part of that. There's also a part of what I really like from what Jade's doing is he looks like he understands what the offense is trying to do. There are a number of times where the first read is designed to open. And so for me, that's a real testament to Cliff and company over there, because third medium, the number one read, open. Third medium, number one read, open. And not just open, but like pretty wide open for league standards, to be able to get those completions, to feel good, to be able to then we're going to use the quarterback run game, open that part of the game up. And so now nobody knows where the hell he's going to be. And all those things combined with his poise, with his he just looks like he belongs, and he has a deep understanding of exactly what they're doing. And then you throw on the top of it how accurate he's been with the ball, and he's off to a great start.
It also feels like when things aren't there, that's when he's using his legs. I mean, to me, his completion, I was at the game against the Bengals, and I was like, man, the Bengals pass rush was terrible. But you could see the comfort in Daniels in the pocket. And it's like, if it's not there, he's not forcing it. He's just going to go pick up 5. And so I feel like the completion percentage is high too, because he's scrambling at the right time. And all he's doing is staying on schedule. And I don't know. The combination of when he runs, I think, is just outstanding right now, decision-wise.
Yeah, he definitely feels like he's got a great feel for the game when it comes to that, whether it be the pocket movement stuff. I think if you're going to, I think the one part that kind of jumps off the film for maybe a few missed opportunities for Jayden has been, and again, I'm hedge this thing, like, because I'm not like air raid certified, and I know Cliff is like an air raidy guy. He's got some air raid bones to him, but every once in a while, it feels like he will drift a little bit and kind of try to. And I know Jayden knows. I've had sat down and had conversations, deep conversations with him about footwork and timing and rhythm. Was locked in at LSU about what they were asking him to do. There's no recess to his drops, and so when I see him take deep drops or 5 or 7 step gun drops, to me, those things are like, hey, is that just the way this offense is made, where he thinks if he's got to buy time, he can do that? Those types of things make me a little nervous. But when he's on time, on schedule, it's not there, take off, use your legs. And then you combine that with the actual quarterback run game and when they're running him and how they're running him, I really like it. And then the other thing with Cliff and the way this offense is constructed, I was just interested to see what Cliff would be like coming back into the league and how to use what I consider like wide edges or heavy personnels. And they seem to do a really good job of mixing that up and making like easier for him with wider edges.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. With the caveat that you haven't done your air raid coaching badges, what have you noticed about this new version of Kingsbury's offense versus where it was when he left the league? Because it sort of felt like, it had almost run its course in Arizona. People were souring on it, and now he's had time away from the game. And so far, the offense is cooking. How different is it?
Well, I think you see the best and the shadow of it, to be honest with you, a little bit, because you can see him what I consider like more NFL modern offense, where you're designing guys open, where you're trying to be like, all right, the winner is going to be here. The number 1 read is there. If it's not there, the same alley, the same lane is going to be the number 2 guy. If that's not there, Jayden, use your legs, go create, go get us some positive yardage. Well, the first guy is there early on in the game. So you can tell that the offensive architecture, the structure, the design is pretty outstanding. I think the one that kind of jumps to my mind, I think there were 2 plays in the last game. One, the interception. It looked like Jayden took what I would consider normally a 3 and a hitch type of play action throw, where I think he took 5, and it was just a tick late. Normally you see those seams or posts thrown with the middle field open at like 20-ish yards. This was at 30 yards. Now the guy made a hell of an interception, one-handed, those types of things, but it felt late. And those are the types of things with, when I think air raid, I think like feel and grass and those types of things, which are really hard to do in the league because everything is so precise. All the space is condensed. And then the other one, I think, was the one that they got away with. I think the corner kind of had a penalty late. He threw a big post over the top. I think he took like a 7-step gun drop, which to me, the only person who does that really ever is Patrick Mahomes. Now, it was impressive that he had the arm strength to let it rip, but it's one of those things where you're really putting those guys on the edge in a tough spot as far as a tackle to do that consistently. Now, if you're doing it just because you feel it and you got to buy time, that's one thing. The other thing I forgot to mention, and I forget the guy's name right now, but man, watching that Commanders film, the right guard for the Commanders, he's like
Cosme
surging up my favorite offensive line in the offensive lineman in the league. He's a blast to watch. They've got some great pass pro going on.
I wanted to ask you about the footwork stuff and the deeper drops. I had somebody ask me on Twitter if that's a reason why Daniels isn't feeling the pressure that, say, Caleb Williams does. But what you mentioned is right. Like normally if you drop to 10 plus yards, which Mahomes did a lot early in his career, the pressure that you're putting on the edge is the angles that they're trying to block for. But is there something to that? Like, are they making it work, the deeper drops for Daniels? Are they making it work? Are they blocking differently to kind of give him that room in the pocket to operate? Or what are like the pros and cons of the deeper drop, right? Like, is there something working for Washington that doesn't work for others maybe?
The answer for me would be no. Those guys, especially on the edge, they know exactly where the hell you're supposed to be. You have to be on your landmark when you're supposed to be there. There's no recessy vibe, I think, in the NFL. And again, this is where the part where I'm coming in with what I think of when I think of Cliff a half decade ago, where there was more air raidiness to the drop, where the timing of it isn't quite as precise as you would see with a lot of quote unquote like West Coast or digit guys who, you know exactly where you're supposed to be, the footwork you can't deviate from. I think there's a lot more what I'm used to calling like combo drops, where you're kind of like letting it open up as you get depth. Those types of things are really tough on an offensive tackle. I'm not sure you can live in that world in the NFL because those edge guys are so dynamic. And you talked about it. You're just giving them a straight shot when they can pin their ears back.
The sample size thing this early in the season is always difficult because, we talk about it with rookies. How much did you come off your priors based off those guys in a few games, but also with veteran quarterbacks as well. And I think the most obvious example this season is Sam Darnold, where we've seen Sam Darnold for a lot of time now in the NFL. Most of it has not looked like this. So is this real, or is this a sample size issue that we're dealing with here? And at some point, Sam Darnold is going to turn back into a pumpkin.
Well, man, tough.
I
think it's somewhere in the middle. I think it might be a little bit more tilting towards real in this situation. And again, this is a great testament to organization, to players that are around you, to play caller. When you've got what I would consider probably one of the best players in the league as your wide receiver, it changes everything. There's a whole different level of open for you. You couple that with how Kevin is calling those plays and how they're designing and moving him around, it feels like, and there's a lot of space for Sam to operate. I also think, for the most part, he's playing at a very high level. The dude can spin it. He's always been able to spin it, but he looks comfortable. He looks decisive. It looks like the way that I was interested to watch him this year is, it looks like he's taken a little bit of Purdy and overlaid it to his game as far as the decisiveness. And I feel like Sam has taken a few times when it hasn't been there, and he's used his legs to get first downs, to get easy first downs, to stay on schedule. Now, I feel like you have to couple that by saying, if you watch the film, he absolutely got lucky a few times. And that thing is going to flip over at some point, and those things are going to turn into more consistent turnovers. And so that part of it, you're just living on the edge right now with Sam until he's able to play those kind of clean back-to-back weeks.
Kevin O'Connell came out saying organizations fail young quarterbacks more so than the other way around, young quarterbacks failing the organization. I hear you talk about structure and play caller and personnel a lot. How do you feel about that? Is it the organization failing young quarterbacks more often than not?
I mean, it's probably even more variables than that. I wouldn't even say it's just the organization. That feels like such a blanket type statement. But yeah, the development, the opportunity, the players that you're playing around. I always think of it as, hey, congratulations, you're the best player. You're going to the worst team.
Yeah.
It's just a bizarrely un-American thing that I know American sports fans are used to. They're used to the draft, but you say draft and anything else, and people will freak the hell out, as they should. But in sports, it's like, yeah, you're the best. Go to the worst, and you're like, wait, what?
Go save them.
But like what? Say what?
Literal socialist principles, and we just accept it in the most capitalist thing in America.
It's just bizarre to me, and I get in trouble sometimes because I'll say that it's very un-American, but to me it really is, and there are other ways to do it. It will never change probably, but the idea being that you get picked high because you're great, and the team that you're going to is probably not great, and so you see the flip side of that. For me, playing out in Carolina to a certain degree, you go into a situation where the weapons are depleted, the organization is in flux, as opposed to you go to Minnesota right now, and it seems like Kevin has really come into his own as far as calling plays. It seems like Justin Jefferson is that dynamic. I mean, it's pretty crazy when you turn on the film and you can manipulate Justin Jefferson's route splits, movements, to have nobody in the screen when he catches the ball. And that's not like some crazy made up play. That's like mesh railroad, like the most simple mesh concept you can run. And they're creating that much space for him. So it's great for Sam. I'm excited to see what it looks like. I think he can really spin it. And, it's one of those things where I just want to see him keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean, Darnold's definitely looked really comfortable in that offense. I think some of the red zone stuff's been really impressive to me. The red zone accuracy. I know he had the high red zone interception. He had another high red zone interception to Fred Warner a couple weeks ago. But the tight, like inside the 5, red zone decision making and accuracy, I think they're just KOC's play calling, Darnold's accuracy and decision making, I think, has been fantastic once they get
and
close.
They're getting guys back. Addison back, Hawkinson on the way. Like the reinforcements coming as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Kevin that I think has been so interesting is I don't know him that well, but I don't know if he called plays before he got there. So for this to be like the first time out the gate and to be, I think it's actually sometimes hard to call plays when you've got such a dynamic kind of gravitational force, because you have to be intentional about moving him around. And it's fun to watch their film and just see all the different places he lines up and moves and how they use Justin Jefferson and really do create opportunities for him to get the ball, because when he's one-on-one, he's getting the ball. The whole stadium should know that he's getting the ball, but they move him around and use him in different ways that's so creative and fun to see.
Have you gotten to watch Trevor Lawrence from this week, or have you been able to watch him closely this year?
Yeah, and it's funny. There's actually, I think there's a little bit of a parallel between how Sam and Trevor are playing. Like, I think when I think of how Sam is playing the position, to me, he just looks so mechanically sound. Like his base, the way he's able to throw and torque his back foot in the ground with that back hip, and you can just tell he's polished up. Where when I turn on the Trevor Lawrence film, and there's a lot of things in Jacksonville, I get it, but man, Trevor Lawrence looks like he is playing backwards. He's all over the place with his feet. He's constantly moving, fall. I've always thought he's been a guy who is a bit of a leaner to the left, meaning he can't, he's so big. Sometimes his film looks a little bit different than everybody else's with his wide base. But man, you turn on the film and he's moving backwards. His feet are all over the place. He's completely inconsistent with his ball location. I always think that it starts from the ground up. And with Trevor, it's a perfect example. If you turn on that last game, there are throws that he is skymailing, and his feet don't give him a chance to be successful.
How much? Because I always thought in college that he would speed up, like he would rush things that he didn't need to. And I feel like I'm seeing things in his decision making where he's almost like just choosing the more difficult option. And he has those games where he hits it, like he hits like this 20-yard deep out between coverage. And if he hits 3 or 4 of them in a game, it's like, wow, that's impressive, Trevor. But I just don't know if he's taking the easy stuff when it's there. And there's something missing in the decision making for me with Lawrence. Are you seeing anything similar?
I mean,
or how would you describe it?
I wouldn't necessarily phrase it like that. I think I'll put it this way. If he hits a couple deep shots down the field, which I wouldn't call them layups, but I would call them easier deep throws.
Yeah.
We're not talking about this. They're 1-3. They have a nice win against the Texans. And they got gifted some field position in that game. But the throw where he misses, I think it was Kirk on the little waggle to the left and big post back the other way.
Yep.
That wasn't close.
Missed it by a mile.
And those are the type of throws where you're just like, bro, those will get a whole team looking at you sideways. And so it's one of those things where you just can't miss those throws consistently. And that wasn't the only one. I think he missed another one on the left side where it's just like, man, we've got to be able to take those opportunities. And then your point about being sped up, I would push back a little bit with what they're doing scheme-wise and saying, if you're looking across the landscape of the league on what I would consider most modern high-level offenses, they look dated. And when I'm saying that, I mean static formations, the same splits all the time. When I think of Doug, doing his thing back in the day, I think of him being like on the forefront of the RPO world.
Yeah.
Where now I think of they're like, hey, man, we got to have something more creative with what we're doing to be able to pop some guys open for Trevor. But then they're popping guys down the field. We're just not hitting them. So it's both of those things. And now all of a sudden we're sitting 0-4.
That's the fascinating thing about this system, this offense to me, is like there was a run a few years ago where this offense was the offense that was like at the forefront, right? All these guys with when RPOs first became like a really big part of NFL offenses. The Chiefs obviously doing their thing. Peterson, his system went to Philadelphia, was amazing. Matt Nagy gets the job in Chicago based off what he was doing in Kansas City. And then it was like as soon as the league figured out how to start defending RPOs and then things shift in a different direction, this offense just got left behind. And Peterson's almost like, obviously Andy Reid is still Andy Reid and is still amazing, but Peterson's is the one that's kind of stagnated.
It definitely feels different, or it feels more dated than when you look at most other people with how much movement, how they're using different splits, how they're, just creating leverage to get easy completions. And so when you talk about, it looks like he's quick, he's playing fast, he's not in the tempo and the rhythm of the offense. To me, that is tethered to the play calling, the design to have that first read open, kind of like the opposite of Jayden Daniels, where you turn on Jayden Daniels film and the first 3 or 4 third downs are wide open throws. That's not happening for Jacksonville. And then when you see the design shot opportunities that are really well designed and called, then we're missing them. And so we're missing both sides of it. And now all of a sudden, it does feel like kind of a dumpster fire when you look at the overall performance of the unit.
JT, we only gave you those 4 to really deep dive into, but early in the season, can you even remember everything that you watch, or is it like a blur when you're done?
No.
Is there anything that stands? So I remember when Zach Robinson used to grade all the quarterbacks, I'd be like, who stood out this week? He goes, I just watched every throw from the NFL. I have no idea what I just watched. Anyone else that stood out positively or negatively, or any other general early season things that you've seen that have stood out schematically or teams or anything, and just throwing you on the spot here?
I mean, I think originally, just like the rest of the league, I was fascinated to see what Green Bay was doing with Malik Willis, just as far as the story and as far as just like pulling for him, as far as like going there, playing against your own team. I thought it was really amazing what LaFleur and company were able to do to kind of play to his strengths. That's the part that always feels weird to me in the league, is you get these quarterbacks, you draft them, you bring them in the building, you develop them or you don't develop them, and you don't allow them to play to their strengths. And that's kind of where I'm a little frustrated with Chicago, if I'm being honest, where I just want them to lean into the strengths of what Caleb does. And I think, you know, as far as someone who's also just interested in watching high level football, I think it's fun to go back and like, it's interesting for me to go watch like what Denver's trying to do and what it looked like. And I know that last game was a bit of a weather game, but it's just one of those things where Bo Nix has a certain set of strengths that you are obviously all in, leaning in on, and how you're going to make that look like and fit it into an NFL offense, to me, is fascinating.
Well, JT, we appreciate it, man. Always enjoy having you on the show. Love listening to your stuff. Again, tell everybody where they can find you.
Appreciate the offer. Yeah, the home is YouTube for sure, and then everything kind of springs from there. So if you're interested, get over there and then hop over to the Patreon community if you can't get enough of me.
Well, let me know when you get into all the college quarterbacks. There's about 25 intriguing names, and I don't know where they end up landing. But
the Shedeur Sanders and I was actually really high on Quinn Ewers.
Yeah,
and I think he hasn't played the last few weeks, but I thought he looked pretty good early on. So we'll see.
Yeah, I thought Ewers just immediately looked like he'd improved. This year versus previous years, continues to get better. So we'll have to have you back on around draft time, though. Breaking down the QBs.
For sure. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, JT.
So much.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.